With the new innovations coming to the Quest all the time, we've been keeping you updated about things like body tracking coming through different means than we're used to. No longer full body trackers may be necessary, where the cameras on it can be tracking your joints just like they do now with hand tracking. Also using predictive algorithms and even AI to figure out what your legs are doing, developing generative legs. It seems that this is getting some attention from developers because the game Just Dance, which is a super popular worldwide phenomenon on all different consoles, is now coming to VR and it's coming to Quest. This was originally supposed to be a Pico 4 exclusive and is now launching on the Quest line instead this October. If somehow you've missed what Just Dance is, this is a game that gives you different popular songs. You can often pay for subscriptions to keep getting more and more songs as they release them, and then you're being tracked on console. Sometimes it's by a phone in your hand, a controller in your hand, or even just a camera like the PlayStation had watching your body. Well, now we're going to be getting that same goodness but inside of a VR headset. Now the game is actually under co-development by Ubisoft Paris and Soul Assembly, who we know they actually sent us the most random package with a pair of their socks in it, and is going to be coming out on October 15th. Just Dance VR, Welcome to Dance City, actually isn't just dance. They say you can play basketball, interact with items and other players, and there's even going to be a social hub, which seems to be a really popular thing we're seeing in more and more VR games. You can wishlist that now. There will be a link in the comments and description, or I usually wait till they come out because you can usually get a referral link, although we have been seeing those disappear more and more. We'll talk about that in another news. Quest isn't the only company that's currently innovating in the area of full body tracking, and interestingly, Vive, who probably sells more full body tracking kits than any other company out there, is saying that you may not need all those Vive trackers here soon due to an AI body tracking update. So the new Vive Ultimate trackers, which we showed you before, those actually use inside out tracking instead of having to have the traditional pucks on you and the lighthouses around the room tracking all of your joints. But due to those cameras, they are now showing off how you can actually set these up on a tripod separately facing someone, and those can be tracking the person themselves. This is actually being shown in the video through the use of rehabilitation therapy, and this makes a lot of sense, especially in that context, because they don't want to be having to strap more things to people's bodies who are already going through the therapy. But for a long time, full body tracking has been a little bit gatekept to people with PCVR and a lot of money because the trackers add up, the lighthouses add up, and it seems between Quest innovation, Vive trackers, there's definitely going to be more options soon. There's even other ones I've seen before that you just use your phone and then that tracks through a PC app, albeit not the best, most accurate full body tracking, but it's good to see all these companies in the VR space pushing each other in different directions and actually innovating in some ways that should make things cheaper for the consumer. And in the world of game innovation, it was huge news recently when we heard that Batman Arkham was finally getting another VR game, a full VR game, and it was only coming to Quest. Well, now they've dropped a story trailer. Of course, that still doesn't show us any actual gameplay, but gives us some idea what the story is going to be of this new game. It talks about the Rat King, which was kind of funny because that's one of the main enemies you face in Demeo, another VR game. Shows how darkness is taking over the city, and as Batman, you have to try and stop this new evil. But with that, we did get at least a few gameplay screenshots. There's still not much to go on here, but Camouflage is one of the developers that actually made the Iron Man VR game, and so far seeing the combat here, hand-to-hand combat with certain targets that you have to punch, it looks like in order. This does kind of remind me a bit of Iron Man. It is still very early even for gameplay screenshots, so I'm hoping that the final gameplay can come anywhere near this level of graphical fidelity on the Quest 3. The only time we've gotten a real taste of Batman Arkham before on VR was originally on PSVR back in the day, and I've got to say I'm really hoping that this game will capture some of the magic of that game, because although that game was a bit of a walking simulator, the story was well put together and interesting, and it wasn't just an action game, which my fear is this game may turn into more of just an action game. But what are your thoughts out there waiting on this game? It's supposed to come out late 2024, although we know that at Gamescom in late August there's supposed to be an actual gameplay reveal, so we'll get to see a lot more then. And speaking of games, if you're still somehow on that free 6 months of Quest Plus that came with the Quest 3, or if you're someone who actually pays for the monthly subscription, the new June free games are out. I put free in quotes because you are paying for the subscription, but it's similar to like PlayStation Plus if you're familiar with that. You pay a fee every month and then you get 2 or so free games that you then get to keep as long as you have the subscription. Well, this month Stride VR Parkour Simulator, a lot of people say, is basically Mirror's Edge in VR, and Warhammer 40,000 Battle Sister, of course part of the huge Warhammer franchise, are both the free games. Ever since Quest Plus launched, I think last year, I've been pretty lukewarm about whether or not it was worth it. It seemed like it was worth it maybe for new people to VR who wanted to rack up that library, but for someone like me who has tons of games, a lot of the games that come out are ones I already own. For instance, I definitely own Stride. I don't think I own Warhammer, but they did add the games catalog, which lets you go back and play a bunch of other games all the time as long as you have the subscription. And this month they actually added Green Hell to the lineup of them and didn't take away any. So you get a bunch of other games like 2MD Football, Township Tale, Demeo, Aspire, and a bunch more you can see here on the screen. It's still $8 per month or $60 annually if you are interested in Quest Plus. I still feel the same way. Obviously, I don't think most of us want another subscription, but if you are new to VR and there is a lot of games on this list you really want to play, you haven't, it might be something worth trying for a while. But remember, you're kind of locked in because once you give up that subscription, any of the games you've gotten for free, you'll lose access to then. And if you're someone who already is paying for a subscription for Netflix, there's now another way you can actually watch this on your Quest headset. The browser now lets you actually log into your Netflix, watch content there up to 1080p. And this is a big improvement because if you were someone who was using Netflix VR, the Netflix app, it was actually capped at 480p, although you do get to sit in kind of a cool living room and look out the window at some mountains. Now, with being able to use the web browser support, you can also be watching Netflix while moving around with a virtual screen and using the mixed reality, and it even allows you to use other 2D apps at the same time. Sadly, you can't pin a Netflix window while you're in a game, but it is another decent option. I think about these things, especially for someone, you know, if you're in a dormitory where you don't really have room for a big TV, at least at 1080p, you can watch the content pretty big in your headset and it still looks good. If you've been around the world of VR for a couple years now, you might remember the initial excitement when we found out Hitman 3 was coming to VR, and then the disappointment when it actually launched, especially on PSVR, with the execution of it. It's just weird choices. You held the DualShock in your hands and you aimed the pistol by aiming the DualShock controller. When you went to strangle somebody, you grabbed them with both of the triggers, I believe, on the DualShock at the time. Well, it looks like we're gonna get a retry because Hitman 3 VR Reloaded is going to be rebuilt from the ground up and exclusively for Quest 3. This is super exciting to me because I remember playing Hitman 2 back in the day and absolutely loving that game. And then when Hitman 3 VR came out, I tried to play it on PlayStation. It was just janky enough that I didn't get through, I think, more than 2 missions before I walked away from it. But now you think about rebuilt from the ground up for VR, independent hand controls for aiming your guns, using the wire to strangle somebody out. Kind of sounds bad now that I say it out loud, but using it with independent free hands with the controllers, dual weapon wielding they bring up, and saying that this should be already close, saying they're going to launch sometime in the summer of this year. Between this, Just Dance, Batman Arkham, Alien that's coming as well, it seems like we're really getting a lot more of those mainstream titles now that Quest 3 is helping push the capabilities of what VR can do. And it's an exciting time for the future of gaming. Not a major IP or title, but an exciting name coming to VR here soon, ever since we saw the trailer for Behemoth. Granted, it was a cinematic trailer and nothing like the gameplay that has finally now launched. We can actually get a glimpse of what Behemoth is going to look like. Multiple media outlets got to try this, and actually if we would have road tripped all the way to Southern California last month, we could have actually gotten to try this, although with the studio move and everything going on, that definitely just was not in the books for us. But different outlets have up to 9 minutes of gameplay showing off Behemoth. You can see side by side, if you look at it here versus the cinematic trailer, obviously doesn't look anything near as good as the cinematic does, but the gameplay really reminds me of a game I loved back on PSVR called Shadow Legend. You've got mechanics like throwing your sword, you've got your hook shot. It's a physics-based game and it sounds like it's going to be about 12 hours of game time. There's different abilities you can unlock in the game. Behemoth looks promising and it's supposed to be coming this fall on all major VR headsets, even including the PSVR 2, which seems like it has not been getting enough love lately. I think I saw one media outlet talking about it, said it was going to be VR Shadow of the Colossus, which would be a pretty big moment with how huge that game was. With that, there's a lot of big games coming this year. I'm really excited about the future of where things are going right now. We've kept you somewhat updated, but if the background looks a little different here, we are in our new studio, which is slowly getting built and finished up, but we've got a long ways to go. It looks like we're back to our more normal schedule, giving you some gaming news every week, some tech news, and everything else you love here on the channel. So thank you so much for your support and being here with us through this move and everything else we've got going on. But just once again, thank you so much, and I'll see you in another reality.